Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to look at how to find the square root of a number. Most of the numbers that you are going to be dealing with that you're going to have to find the square roots for are very basic numbers, and finding square roots are actually fairly simple. The basic idea of it is this. If we were to do an exponential power to 2, let's say, for example, that we were to use 7 squared. When we multiply 7 squared, 7 times 7, we end up with 49. Taking the square root of a number essentially undoes a squaring of a number. So if I take the square root of 49, then my answer becomes 7. And that's basically how square roots work. Now, there are some instances where we won't know the square root of a number. For example, if I were to give you, say, the square root of 10, in this case, we don't have an actual number answer, so the best that we can do is estimate where that number would be based on numbers that surround it. So let's try that. So here we have the square root of 10, and as we said, there is no square root of 10. We can't multiply two numbers to give us 10, or rather, we can't multiply the same number by itself to give us a value of 10. The only thing we can do is try to figure out where that number would be between what two values. So what we'll do is we're going to take the square root of 10, and we're going to work with the two square roots on either side of 10 that we do know answers to. So for the first one, we're going to use the square root of 9. And this is the next closest value that we can find a square root of that is less than 10. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to find the next closest value that is greater than 10 that we also can find a square root of. And in this case, that would be 16. So if I'm going to find the value of these two numbers, all I need to do is figure out what number times itself is equal to 9. And if we think about our answers, we're going to come up with an answer of 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Same thing with 16. We're going to think what number can I multiply by itself to get 16? And of course the answer is 4. So what we can determine from this is that if we were able to find the square root of 10, or if we were at least able to estimate what it would be, then the square root of 10 would be somewhere in between the integers 3 and 4. That about does it. I'm going to give you a couple of practice problems and we'll see how you do. So for our first problem, we are going to look at the square root of 25. Our next one we're going to look at is the square root of 121. And then our final square root is going to be the square root of 225. So go ahead and pause your video and see if you can solve the three square roots that you have on your screen. Okay, so our first square root, the square root of 25, this one hopefully is fairly simple for you. All we have to do is figure out what number times itself equals 25. And of course the answer for that one would be 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. For 121, slightly more challenging, but again, something that you probably should already know. And the square root of 121 would be 11. Now for this last one, the square root of 225, this is not one that's as common for people to know. So what we do is we try to think of numbers that might get us close to that. So what we can think about is this. We know that the square root of 11, or the square root of 121 is 11, and we also know, if we know our multiplication tables, that the square root of 144 is 12. So if we're trying to estimate for 225, we know that it's going to be at least higher than the number 12. So the simplest method of doing this, if you don't have a calculator handy, is to just start multiplying and see what you get. So we're going to just start off with 14 and see how that goes. So let's multiply 14 times 14. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 1 plus 1 is 5. We have our placeholder, and then 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. And we multiply 14 times 14 and we get 196. So we know we're pretty close. So we'll just try one more. This time we're going to try 15 times 15. So let's go ahead and multiply that. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 1 plus 2 is 7. We hold a place value. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. And when we add these together, we end up with 5. 7 plus 5 is 12. And 1 plus 1 is 2. So we find our answer, the square root of 25, is indeed 15. So there we have it. Those are the answers for the different problems that you guys had to solve, and I will see you tomorrow.